Okay, welcome in class. It's so good to see you all. Take your seats, take your seats. Now, you might notice that the location is a little bit different from my typical podcast, or excuse me, my typical classroom setting. And that is because we are actually in a classroom today, which does seem a lot more fitting for photo school. My dad is a seventh grade math teacher, and I just found out that my dad has actually been showing his career class some of my photo school episodes, which is so, so sweet because some of the students have actually said that it's inspired them to want to be photographers. And that is truly the reason why I'm doing this and what fills me with so much joy and makes me so happy. So, shout out to Mr. Heisman's seventh grade students, okay? So, this class is very, very important. I think in photography, the first thing that you need to nail down is ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And then once you have that portion down, it's time to level up and now get into coloring. So, specifically, I want to talk about shooting in white balance versus Kelvin. If you've ever wondered, like, why do my photos sometimes look blue? Or when I'm inside, they're a little bit more orange? Or why don't I have a consistent edit? We're going to talk about that today and fix all of that so your photos look a lot more consistent when you're taking them in your camera. So, today in class, we're going to be talking about white balance and Kelvin. So, first, let's talk about what white balance actually is. White balance is honestly just your camera deciding like what white should look like in this photo because light is not neutral. Candlelight is orange, shade is more blue, a flash is neutral. So, your camera is constantly trying to interpret that and figure out what true white is. So when you shoot an auto white balance, your camera's just basically guessing what true white is and then adjusting all of the other settings around that to match. Auto white balance is programmed to remove color cast. So think if you are shooting like a golden hour or a candlelit ceremony or something of that nature, it's probably going to be removing some of that warmth that you're trying to capture. And the other thing that's a little bit tricky is the white balance will shift from image to image. So if you go to different locations and the lighting's a bit different, it's going to make your images a bit more inconsistent. So, because white balance can sometimes be inconsistent, that is where it can make your editing harder. Whereas, if you are shooting in Kelvin, you actually have the ability to change what the temperature is in any setting so you can make everything look pretty consistent. I'll never forget the day I learned about Kelvin. I'll never forget it. No, but really, that day changed my life. I remember I was outside photographing with another photographer, and we were using the exact same camera, the exact same settings, and then we'd show each other the photos. And I'm like, wait, why do mine look like shit and yours look a million times better? And he was like, oh, it's because I'm shooting in Kelvin. And that day, changed the trajectory of my career. I'm not even kidding you. Once I learned that I had the ability to make my photos warmer or cooler and really change the way they looked inside the camera, game over. Oh my gosh, game over. So today I want to give you that same experience and change your life as well. And we're going to talk about how to shoot in Kelvin. When you switch to Kelvin, you're manually telling your camera what temperature you want that picture to be. And Kelvin is just the scale of temperature. So think a lower number is going to be a lot cooler and a higher number is going to be a lot warmer. Most times when you're shooting something indoors, naturally it's just going to pull a little bit warmer. So when you are shooting in Kelvin, you could drop down and make it a lot more neutral. When I'm outside, I like to shoot in Kelvin anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000. And then when I'm indoors, that is a little bit different. That can be anywhere from like 3,000 to 4,500. And so it really just depends on what the lighting calls for. And that is just kind of something that you also, depending on what your editing style is, maybe you like things cooler or maybe you like things warmer. So Kelvin gives you that great ability to kind of change based on what you like personally and visually. So now the con with Kelvin is that you do have to understand what your style is and be able to change quickly. Auto white balance is great because it just changes things for you. Like you don't have to go into your settings and fix anything, which is really nice if you're going quickly and don't have the time to change your settings. But if you do have the time, Kelvin is so, so great because again, you can manually adjust your coloring and your temperature. I do think that if you are starting to learn your camera and you really just want to figure out ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, maybe just set your camera to auto white balance so you don't even have to think about changing the temperature and you can just focus on the lighting of your images. As you started to master ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, then that's when I would go into the coloring and mess around with Kelvin. Figure out what you like editing style wise. So as you're editing your photos, do you like your photos a little bit warmer? Do you like them a little bit cooler? What does that look like for you? I'm someone who likes to shoot a lot more true to color, so I don't think my Kelvin settings would necessarily work for someone who has a more moody, warm, dark editing style. If you are someone who's been relying on auto white balance for your coloring for all of your images, I mean, that is totally fine, but I do feel like shooting in Kelvin is so much better in the sense that you can control what the coloring looks like. I think that when you shoot in auto white balance, it is a little bit more out of your hands. And the more you practice with Kelvin, the more your eye will get trained to notice like what you want it to look like out of the camera because you'll understand what you need it to look like once you go into editing. So sometimes when I'm at weddings, if I'm doing something indoors and I'm going into different rooms and I don't have the time to change my Kelvin quickly, I will just go into auto white balance because then I don't even have to think about it. All I have to do is change my lighting settings. And then when I'm outside though, and I have a little bit more time, I always like to shoot in Kelvin because I find that it takes away a bit of the coloring when I'm in auto white balance outside. And I don't really like that as far as when I go into editing. I like to add a little bit more warmth, especially if there's greenery and things of that nature. I like to make sure that the greenery is a certain temperature and looks a certain way. So I always go into Kelvin. So if you want to start experimenting with Kelvin in your photos, let me give you some of the settings that I would recommend starting out. And then from there, you can kind of move around and test to see what you like the best. So for outdoor sunset photos, let's have you start at around 5,000 and you could go all the way up to 7,000 and see what you like. If you like it a little bit warmer, if you like it a little bit cooler, those are kind of the settings that I would recommend in Kelvin. Then if you are doing maybe more of an open shaded area, let's do 6,000 to 6,500. If you're doing indoor photos, let's try anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000. That is what I would recommend if you are just starting out and don't necessarily know where to put your Kelvin settings at. And then you obviously can mess around with it and see what you like the best. Also, once you are done taking your photos, put them in Lightroom and try messing around editing with them. See what is easier for you. If it's the cooler images, if it's the warmer images, if it's the more neutral looking photos, what is easier for you to edit? Okay, so I put together a white balance and a Kelvin cheat sheet that you can look at no matter what settings you're in to adjust your settings quickly. You can find that on my website in my For Photographers section. And again, it is a free download that you can have access to today. Oh, shoot. Oh my gosh. Is that the bell? Okay. Guys, it is so cool doing this in a classroom. I definitely like the aesthetic of where I normally shoot this, but this was a great change of pace. Thank you all so much for joining me in class today. I had so much fun and I can't wait to see you next time.